The river was rising fast. Jack Harper ran through the tall reeds, his boots slapping against the mud, the sound swallowed by the roar of water. "Rasty! This way!" he shouted. The dog bounded ahead, a massive German shepherd with a coat the color of rust and eyes that never left his master. The rain had started only an hour ago, but the calm summer sky had turned dark as iron. Somewhere downstream, a tree cracked and fell with a sound like thunder. Jack slipped, caught himself, and laughed breathlessly. "Guess we're getting a bath, buddy." Rasty barked once, deep and steady, the kind of bark that meant keep moving. The old bridge ahead was half collapsed, its wooden planks tilting into the current. Jack crouched, tested one beam with his weight. "Don't look down," he muttered. Rasty tilted his head as if to say, "You first." Jack grinned despite himself. "You're smarter than me." He crossed carefully, one plank at a time. When they reached the other side, the storm eased. The smell of wet grass and pine filled the air. Rasty shook himself, sending droplets everywhere. "Yeah," Jack said. "We made it again." They found shelter beneath an old willow tree, its branches bending low over the riverbank. Jack sat down heavily, resting his back against the trunk. His backpack, patched with duct tape, leaned beside him. Inside a tin cup, a knife, and half a loaf of bread wrapped in brown paper. Rasty sat close, head resting on Jack's knee. The man broke the bread in half and handed him a piece. "Dinner for two," he said. "Don't say I never spoil you." Rasty chewed slowly, eyes half closed. The rain softened into a whisper. Somewhere, a loon called across the water. Jack closed his eyes and listened. The sound of the river always calmed him, even when it was wild. He'd been following it for months now, drifting from town to town, never staying long. The river didn't ask questions. It didn't judge. It just kept moving. Sometimes he imagined it carried all his memories downstream. The factory job he lost, the apartment he couldn't afford, the woman he couldn't save. But it also carried something else, a quiet hope that maybe, somewhere along its banks, there'd be a place to stop running. He opened his eyes and looked at Rasty. "We'll find it soon, old boy," he said. The dog thumped his tail once. A real roof, maybe. Dry floor, no rats. Rasty snorted, unimpressed. "All right, maybe some rats," Jack chuckled. The light shifted a break in the clouds, let through a streak of gold. Across the river, something caught his eye, a faint square shape, half hidden behind the reeds. It looked like a building. "You see that?" he murmured. Rasty stood, ears perked. "Yeah, let's go see if the river's got one more surprise for us." They followed the bank until they found a fallen tree bridging the narrowest point of the river. The current foamed around it, angry but crossable. Jack tossed his pack to the far side, then crawled across on hands and knees, Rasty trotting behind with feline balance. When they reached the other bank, the smell changed, moss, cedar, and something old, like forgotten wood. The ground rose slightly, leading to a clearing. There, half swallowed by vines and silence, stood a cabin. It wasn't much, one story, maybe 20 feet across, roof sagging in the middle, windows cracked, but to Jack, it looked like a palace. The river shimmered behind it, and a willow tree grew right beside the porch, its roots tangled in the earth, like old hands gripping the land. "Would you look at that?" he whispered. Rasty barked once, circling the front steps, sniffing. "Yeah, I know," Jack said. "Probably full of raccoons. Or ghosts." He touched the door. It gave a low, hollow creak. Home sweet maybe home. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and dust. Light leaked through holes in the roof, falling in soft golden stripes. A table lay overturned, its legs splintered. A few old tools hung on the wall, a hammer, a saw, a lantern long out of oil. Jack ran his hand along the table, leaving a trail through the dust. "Feels solid," he said. "Mostly." He straightened it and sat down. The chair groaned but held. Rasty patted around, sniffing every corner before settling near the door. "Approval noted," Jack said with a grin. He explored the rest of the cabin, a small cot in the corner, a stone fireplace blackened with soot, shelves lined with glass jars filled with the dust of long-forgotten things. "Somebody lived here once," Jack murmured. "Somebody who knew how to build with their hands." He ran his fingers over the rough-hewn beams. They were old, but sturdy. Maybe they left because they had somewhere better to go. He paused, then added quietly, "Maybe we don't." The dog whined softly, as if disagreeing. Jack smiled. Yeah, you're right. We got nowhere but up." As evening fell, he cleared a space near the fireplace. The chimney was half blocked, but with patience and a little luck, he got a small fire going. The flames flickered weakly, then grew stronger, casting orange light over the walls. Rasty curled up nearby, content. Jack warmed his hands and sighed. "You know," he said, "if we fix that roof, we might just have ourselves a summer home." He leaned back, watching the firelight dance. "I used to build houses, you know, whole neighborhoods. Guess I forgot how much I missed it." The memory came slowly, the smell of sawdust, the rhythm of hammers, his crew calling him Cap. He'd been good at it, careful, honest, until the company folded and the bills piled up. He tried to keep his home, tried to keep everything. But life had a way of knocking you off balance, one missed payment, one bad break, one loss too heavy to carry. Now his hands, once calloused from work, were just rough from the cold. But for the first time in years, he felt a spark, not just from the fire, but from purpose. The next morning, sunlight poured through the broken windows. Rasty was already outside, nose to the ground, tail wagging. Jack stretched, joints cracking like old wood. He stepped onto the porch and looked around. Birds fluttered between trees. The river glittered like glass. "Not bad," he muttered. He found a rusted bucket near the steps and filled it from the river. The water was cold, clean. He splashed his face, grinning. "All right, Rasty," he said. "Lesson 1. How to turn a ruin into a home." They started small. Jack cleared the floor of debris, swept the corners with a bundle of branches. Rasty followed him everywhere, occasionally dragging sticks or bits of cloth he'd found outside. "Good boy," Jack said. "Interior decorator, huh?" By afternoon, the cabin looked less like a ghost house and more like a place where someone might live again. Jack sat on the steps, shirt damp with sweat, and looked at his work. "You know," he told Rasty, "we might just belong here." The dog wagged his tail in agreement, eyes bright. "Yeah," Jack said softly. "Feels right." As the days passed, the rhythm of life returned. Jack mended a hole in the roof, using old planks from a nearby shed. He cleaned the fireplace and built a small rack to dry firewood. Every evening, he and Rasty sat by the river, watching the sun set in bands of gold and crimson. "We've been ghosts too long," Jack said one night. "Maybe it's time to be people again." Rasty leaned against his leg, warm and heavy. Jack smiled, feeling something he hadn't in years: peace. One afternoon, while exploring near the trees, Jack found a small metal box buried in the dirt. It was rusted shut, but curiosity got the better of him. He pried it open with his knife. Inside were a few coins, a folded letter, and a photograph. A man, a woman, and a young boy standing in front of the very same cabin. The photo was sun-bleached, but intact. The boy was holding a fishing rod. The man had his arm around the woman. They looked happy. "You built this," Jack murmured, "and you loved it." He closed the box carefully. That night, he placed the photograph on the mantel. "We'll take care of it for you," he said. "Promise." The fire crackled softly, casting shadows across the room. Rusty lifted his head, ears twitching at the sound of an owl outside. "We're not alone anymore, pal," Jack said. "Not really." The dog wagged his tail once before drifting to sleep. Jack lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The old boards creaked in the wind. For the first time in years, he didn't mind the sound. It was the sound of a home breathing. In the days that followed, Jack fixed more than the cabin. He started fixing himself slowly, like patching a wall one plank at a time. He shaved, washed his clothes in the river, built a small fence around the porch. Rusty watched every move, proud as a foreman. Sometimes, Jack caught himself talking to the dog like a partner. "What do you think another coat of paint?" Rusty barked once. "You're right. Rustic charm suits us." When it rained, they sat inside, listening to the drops tap the roof instead of leaking through it. Progress. But peace never lasted long for Jack. One afternoon, he noticed footprints near the riverbank, fresh ones. Not his, not Rusty's. Someone else had been there. The prince led toward the cabin, then turned away. "Got visitors," he muttered. Rusty growled low. "Easy, boy. Maybe they're just curious." Still, Jack felt a prickle of unease. He'd built this small world with his own hands. The thought of losing it made his chest tighten. "If they come back," he said quietly, "we'll handle it. Together." That night, Jack dreamed of voices, laughter, music, the sound of hammering wood. He dreamed of his wife, of their old home by another river long ago. "We did good, Jack," she said in the dream. "You built beauty out of nothing." He woke to find the fire low, Rusty snoring beside him. The photograph on the mantel gleamed softly in the half-light. Jack smiled, tears in his eyes. "Maybe we did good again," he whispered. As dawn broke, mist curled over the river like breath. Jack stood on the porch, mug of river water in hand, watching the world wake up. The air smelled of pine and promise. Rusty trotted to his side, pressing against his leg. "You know, boy," Jack said, "I think this place has one more secret left in it." He smiled. "Let's find out what it is." And with that, the man and his dog stepped into the golden light, unaware that the next days would test their bond and lead them towards something bigger than either imagined. By the second week, the river had settled back into its quiet rhythm. The days were warm, the evenings cool enough for a fire. Jack spent his mornings patching the roof and his afternoons fishing downstream. Rusty followed every cast, tail wagging, waiting for his share. "You know, boy," Jack said one day, "we've got it figured out. Peace and fish. What else does a man need?" But as he spoke, his eyes drifted toward the far bank, to the place where he'd seen those footprints. They hadn't disappeared. If anything, there were more now. He decided to check after sunset. The forest beyond the river grew quiet then, except for the hum of crickets and the rush of water. Rusty padded beside him, nose low, ears sharp. They moved slowly, following the soft indentations in the mud. Some prints were boot-shaped, others lighter, like a child's shoe. Jack frowned. "Families don't come this deep," he murmured. The trail led to a grove of birch trees, where it ended abruptly. Nearby, something glinted in the dirt, a small tin cup. Jack picked it up, turning it over in his hands. "Someone's been here, all right." The next morning he found something else, a small bundle left on the porch. It was wrapped in burlap, tied with string. Inside were 2 cans of beans, a jar of honey, and a folded note. The handwriting was neat, but shaky. "Didn't know anyone lived here. Hope this helps. From a friend." Jack stared at it, unsure what to feel. Gratitude? Suspicion? He glanced at Rasty. "A friend, huh?" The dog sniffed the bundle, tail uncertain. "Guess we've got neighbors," he smiled faintly. "Either that or angels shop at grocery stores now." That evening, as the sky turned amber, Jack sat by the river with Rasty lying beside him. "Someone out there knows we're here," he said quietly. "And they're watching." The thought didn't frighten him. It was almost comforting, the idea that they weren't invisible anymore. He reached for the jar of honey, scooped a bit with his finger, and held it out. Rasty licked it, eyes closing in contentment. Jack laughed softly. "You got a sweet tooth, huh? Figures. You deserve better than all this wandering." Later that night, thunder rolled in the distance. The wind stirred the trees, and Rasty lifted his head, ears twitching. "Storm again?" Jack muttered. He stepped onto the porch, scanning the horizon. Lightning flashed, and for a brief moment, he saw movement near the tree line. A figure, small and hunched, carrying something. Then darkness again. "Hey," he called. No answer. Only the whisper of rain starting to fall. "Stay here," he told Rasty. The dog growled softly but obeyed. Jack grabbed his lantern and headed into the storm. The rain thickened quickly, soaking his jacket. He moved toward where he'd seen the figure, lantern bobbing. "Hello?" he shouted. "You all right out here?" No reply, but then, faintly, a whimper. Not human, high-pitched, desperate. Jack followed the sound, slipping through mud and roots until he found it a small puppy tangled in wire near a fallen branch, struggling weakly. "Oh, buddy," he whispered, kneeling. The pup's fur was matted, one paw bleeding. Jack freed it gently, wrapping it in his coat. "It's okay. I got you." The puppy whimpered once, then went limp against his chest. He ran back through the rain, Rasty barking from the porch as he approached. "Got another guest," Jack panted. He placed the puppy near the fire, rubbing it with a towel. Rasty sniffed it, tail uncertain, then licked the pup's ear. Jack smiled. "That's my boy." He fed the little dog warm milk from his tin cup. "You're safe now," he murmured. The puppy's breathing steadied. "Guess that answers the question of who was out there," Jack said. "Someone left you behind." His jaw tightened. "Not on my watch." By morning, the rain had stopped, and the world smelled fresh and clean. The puppy, a small brown mutt with floppy ears, slept curled beside Rasty. Jack watched them, heart full. "Well," he said, "looks like we're a family now." He named the pup Scout. Over the next few days, Scout grew stronger, stumbling after Rasty, biting his tail, getting gently nudged away. Jack laughed more than he had in years. The cabin felt alive, 3 souls bound by chance, or maybe fate. Then, one afternoon, a shadow crossed the doorway. Jack looked up from carving wood. A woman stood there, hands raised. "I didn't mean to scare you," she said quickly. "You're the man by the river, right?" She looked to be in her 30s, wearing a worn jacket and carrying a canvas bag. "You left this," Jack said, holding up the burlap bundle's note. She nodded. "I come here sometimes. My dad built this cabin years ago. I didn't think anyone used it anymore." Her eyes softened when she saw the dogs. "You fixed it up nice." Jack relaxed a little. "You're the friend, then." "Emma," she said. "And you?" "Jack, this is Rasty, and that troublemaker Scout." Emma crouched to pet the puppy, who immediately tried to chew her shoelace. She laughed. "He likes me." Jack smiled. "He likes everyone. Rasty's the one you've got to impress." The big shepherd watched silently, then sniffed her hand and wagged his tail once. "That's approval," Jack said. "He doesn't hand it out easy." Emma looked around. "My dad would have liked this. He always said the cabin was built to last." They talked as the sun sank low, the golden light pouring through the cracks in the wall. Emma told him her father had been a fisherman who built the cabin decades ago. After he died, no one came back until her. "I guess I wanted to see if it was still standing," she said. "And it is," Jack said softly. "Barely, but it's got good bones," she smiled. "Like us, maybe." When she left, she promised to return with more supplies. Jack watched her disappear down the trail, feeling something strange stir in his chest hope. Days passed. Emma returned often, bringing bread, medicine for Scout, and sometimes coffee. They'd sit on the porch, talking while the dogs played. She asked about his life, and he told her bits, the jobs, the mistakes, the miles. "You ever think about starting over?" she asked one evening. Jack chuckled. "Every morning. Then I remember the world doesn't hire men with beards like mine." She smiled gently. "Maybe the world just hasn't met the right man yet." He didn't reply, but her words lingered long after she left. Then, one morning, while chopping wood, Jack heard Rasty growl deep and low. He turned. 2 men stood at the edge of the clearing, strangers in dark jackets. "This your place?" one asked. Jack wiped his hands. "Temporarily." The man smirked. "Belongs to the Whitman family, doesn't it?" Jack frowned. "It belonged to a man who built it with his hands. I'm just keeping it standing." The taller man stepped closer. "We're developers. Bought this land last year. Cabin's condemned." Jack's chest tightened. "Condemned?" "Yeah. You've got a week to clear out." After they left, Jack sat on the porch in silence, staring at the trees. Rasty whined softly, pressing his head against Jack's knee. "They'll tear it down," Jack whispered. "Everything we built." He looked around the cabin, the patched roof, the firewood stack, Scout's little bed made from an old blanket. "We finally found home. And now—" He trailed off. Anger and sadness tangled inside him. But Rasty barked once, sharp, defiant. Jack smiled faintly. "Yeah, not without a fight." When Emma returned that evening, Jack told her everything. Her face hardened. "They can't just take it. They can if they've got papers," Jack said. "And money." She shook her head. "My father left records proof he owned this land. If I can find them, maybe we can stop them." She stood abruptly. "I'll check the old house in town. Don't go anywhere." "Not planning to," Jack said. But as she disappeared into the woods, he felt a weight settle over him. He'd seen too many promises fade before. Still, something in her voice made him believe. The next few days were tense. Jack repaired what he could, as if preparing the cabin for its final test. He built a wooden sign near the porch, built by hands, protected by love. When the developers returned, they'd see it first. Rasty and Scout followed his every move, tails low but loyal. If they take it, they'll have to go through you two, Jack said. Rasty barked once in agreement. And me, he added softly. They'll have to go through me. On the fourth day, Emma returned breathless, hair damp with sweat, in her hand a folder. I found it, she said. Inside were old deeds and maps, yellowed with age. This cabin's not on their parcel, she said, smiling through tears. It's public land. They can't touch it. Jack exhaled, relief washing through him. You're sure? Positive. She handed him the papers. You don't have to run any more, Jack. This place is yours now if you want it. He looked at her, speechless, then at Rasty, who barked, happily. Guess we're staying, huh? He whispered. That night, they celebrated with coffee and fresh bread. The dogs wrestled by the fire, tails wagging. Jack looked around the cabin, the flickering light, the laughter, the smell of wood smoke. Feels different, he said quietly. Feels like it's really ours now. Emma smiled. It always was. You just gave it life again. Outside, the river glowed silver under the moon. Jack raised his cup. To second chances. Emma clinked her tin mug against his, and to old dogs who never gave up. As the fire dimmed, Jack sat beside Rasty, scratching behind his ears. You did good, boy, he said softly. We both did. Rasty looked up, eyes shining in the firelight. Maybe it's time to stop wandering. The dog thumped his tail. Yeah, Jack whispered. I think so. Scout yawned, curling against Rasty's side. Jack smiled. Looks like he's found his place too. He leaned back, the sound of the river filling the silence. For the first time in years, Jack felt like he belonged not just somewhere, but to somewhere. As dawn crept over the trees, Jack stepped outside. The sky was streaked with gold, the air cool and alive. Rasty trotted out beside him, Scout bounding after. We made it, boys, Jack said. Took us a lifetime, but we made it. He watched the river flow calm, endless, unjudging. It whispered against the stones, carrying away the last pieces of his old life. He smiled. Let's build something new. And with the sun rising behind them, the man and his dogs began the next chapter of their quiet miracle by the river. Summer slowly folded into autumn, and the leaves along the river turned gold. Jack had stopped counting the days. Time felt different now, no longer something to survive, but something to live inside. The cabin stood proudly under the willow tree, patched and painted, smoke rising from its chimney each evening. Rasty slept on the porch most days, his gray muzzle resting on his paws, while Scout grew stronger, bigger, bolder. You're turning into trouble, Jack would laugh, tossing him a stick. The dog barked and chased it into the reeds, splashing happily. The news about the man and his dogs by the river spread quickly through the small town nearby. People began visiting, some out of curiosity, others out of kindness. A fisherman brought fresh catch once a week. A retired carpenter dropped off nails and wood. Heard you know how to use these, he said with a grin. Jack smiled, grateful but shy, maybe once or twice. Emma came often, bringing her camera. She said she wanted to document the place. For what? Jack asked. For proof, she said, that kindness still builds things. Together, they turned the cabin into something more than shelter. Jack repaired the porch, added new steps, and built a small shed nearby. Emma helped plant wildflowers by the path. They found an old sign washed up by the river, cleaned it, and carved new words into the wood. The willow cabin, a home for the lost and found. When he hung it above the door, Jack felt something deep shift inside him. It wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to anyone who needed a second chance, the kind of place he'd once prayed for but never expected to find. By mid-autumn, visitors came not just to see but to stay. A young man passing through town asked if he could camp near the river for a few nights. Jack agreed, sharing food and stories. The man left with dry clothes, a full belly, and tears in his eyes. "You don't know what this means," he said. Jack smiled. "Yeah, I do," Rasty barked approvingly. Word spread, and more people came lost, travelers, drifters, even a woman escaping a bad home. Jack never turned anyone away. "Everyone deserves one safe night," he said. "That's rule number 1. Rasty took to guarding the cabin like a proud old sentinel. He'd sit by the door, ears perked, eyes scanning the riverbank. Scout, now grown, followed his lead, but still found time to steal socks from guests and drop them in the water. "You're teaching him bad habits," Jack teased. Rasty gave a slow blink, unimpressed. "Fine, maybe he's teaching himself." At night, both dogs slept close to Jack's cot, their steady breathing the best lullaby he knew. The cabin felt alive, not just with laughter and warmth, but with purpose. One afternoon, Emma arrived with a folded newspaper. "You made the front page," she said, handing it to him. There, beneath a photograph of Jack with his dogs, was the headline, "The Man Who Built Hope by the River." Jack stared at it, stunned. "You wrote this?" "Guilty," she said. "People need to see what one man and 2 dogs can do." He chuckled. "You make me sound like a saint." "No," she said softly. "Just human. That's better." He folded the paper carefully and placed it on the shelf beside the old photograph he'd found months ago. Days turned cooler, and the river began to freeze along the edges. Jack split firewood, stacking it neatly. "Winter's coming, boys," he said. "We'll need to stick close." Rasty watched from the porch, head tilted. His movements had slowed lately. His fur had dulled. Jack noticed, but said nothing. That evening, as the first snow began to fall, he sat beside him. "You've done enough, old friend," he whispered, scratching his ears. "Whatever comes next, we'll handle it." Rasty leaned into his touch, eyes gentle, as if he already knew what Jack couldn't yet admit. The next morning was quiet, too quiet. The air was still, the snow untouched. Jack stirred from sleep and reached for Rasty's side cold. The old dog lay peacefully near the hearth, eyes closed, a faint smile frozen on his muzzle. For a long time, Jack didn't move. He just sat there, hand resting on Rasty's fur. "You waited for me to find home first," he whispered. Tears came slow, silent. Scout pressed close, whining softly. "It's okay," Jack said through the ache. "He's just guarding another place now." They buried Rasty beneath the willow tree, overlooking the river he'd loved. Emma carved a small wooden marker. "Rasty the goodest boy." Jack smiled through the grief. "You'd have hated the fuss, old pal." For days afterward, Scout lay beside the grave, refusing to move. Jack sat with him, telling stories about the long walks, the storms, the first time Rasty had found food when they were starving. "He kept me alive," Jack said softly. "Guess it's my turn to keep something alive now." The wind whispered through the branches, gentle and kind. Winter deepened, but the cabin stayed warm. Jack worked harder than ever, almost as if the rhythm of building could fill the hollow inside him. He fixed the fences, reinforced the roof, and carved a small wooden figure of Rasty to place by the mantel. Each night, he'd sit by the fire, Scout curled at his feet, and whisper, "Still here, buddy." Sometimes, he swore he could hear a faint thump of a tail in reply. The ache never left, but it softened into gratitude. Rasty had given him everything: loyalty, love, and the courage to begin again. When spring came, the cabin was greener than ever. The river thawed, alive with light. Flowers bloomed along the path, bright and wild. Emma helped Jack build a wooden dock so kids from the town could come fish. Soon, laughter returned to the banks. Families brought food. Volunteers helped plant a garden. "This place is magic," one woman said. Jack smiled. "It's not magic," he replied. "Just kindness with good timing." Still, deep down, he knew Rasty's spirit was part of it, in every breeze, every ripple, every wag of Scout's tail. As the seasons rolled by, the willow cabin became more than a home. It became a refuge. Travelers left notes carved into the fence posts. "Thank you. Safe here. Hope lives by the river." Emma turned the photos into a small exhibit in town, and people came from miles away to see them. The mayor even visited, offering funding to expand the project. Jack shook his head. "We don't need money," he said. "We just need hearts." The mayor nodded. "Then you'll have both." Jack laughed. "Guess we're going big, huh, boy?" Scout barked in agreement. Years passed quietly. Scout grew old, slower but still playful. Jack's beard turned silver, his hands roughened again from work. Yet he never left the river. Every morning, he'd walk the bank with Scout at his side, talking to him like always. "You know," he said one day, "I used to think I lost everything, but look at us now." Scout wagged his tail weakly. "Yeah," Jack said. "We did all right." They stopped beneath the willow. Jack rested a hand on the trunk. "He'd be proud of us," he whispered. "You, me, and this old river." When Emma visited, she brought a small plaque bronze, engraved with simple words. "The Willow Cabin, founded by Jack Harper and Rasty, who taught us that love builds more than walls." Jack traced the letters with his finger. "He'd have chewed this thing," he said with a laugh. Emma smiled. "Then it's perfect." They installed it beside the porch. That night, under the stars, Jack sat by the fire and stared at it, the flames reflecting in his eyes. "Not bad for two strays," he whispered. One summer evening, a family arrived, a father, mother, and young girl. "We saw the article," the man said. "Do you still take people in?" Jack nodded. "If you don't mind small rooms and big dogs." The girl laughed as Scout nudged her hand. "He likes you," Jack said. "Means you're good people." That night, they ate together, telling stories by the fire. The girl fell asleep on Scout's back, hand buried in his fur. Jack watched them with quiet joy. The circle was complete, love given, love returned. As years went on, the cabin became a landmark. Teachers brought students to learn about compassion. Volunteers helped maintain the trails. A small wooden bridge was built across the river, connecting the cabin to the town. Jack often stood there at dusk, watching the water flow beneath his feet. "We started with nothing," he'd say. And somehow, that was enough. His voice always carried a mix of wonder and humility, as if he still couldn't quite believe it had all happened. One autumn morning, Emma found him sitting on the porch, sunlight warming his face. Scout lay beside him, both peaceful, both still. On the table sat a mug of coffee, half finished, and a note written in neat, careful handwriting. "If I'm gone, don't be sad. I had more than I ever deserved. Tell them I love this place and everyone who found it. Bury me beside my friends, under the willow. The river will tell the rest." Emma cried quietly, placing her hand over his. "Rest easy, Jack," she whispered. "You made it home." They buried him beside Rasty and Scout under the great willow tree. The townspeople came, dozens of them, leaving flowers, stones, and small carvings. Someone strummed a guitar. Others shared stories of how the cabin had saved them. Emma placed Jack's old notebook on the grave. Inside were sketches of the cabin through the seasons, always with the river, always with the dogs. As the sun dipped behind the trees, the water caught the light, glowing like liquid gold. "He's part of it now," she said softly. "Part of everything." Years later, the cabin still stood. The garden thrived, the dock extended farther into the water, and the laughter of children echoed through the trees. The bronze plaque had weathered, but the words remained. On quiet evenings, visitors swore they could hear faint barking near the riverbank, two dogs chasing through the reeds, a man's voice calling their names. The wind and the willow leaves always sounded like laughter. The locals called it the whispering tree. And so the man who once had nothing left behind, something that could never be taken home, a story, a legacy built from kindness. Beneath the willow, the river flowed on, carrying his memory toward the horizon. Every ripple, every bird call, every sunrise felt like a small thank you from the world he'd once thought had forgotten him. And somewhere, in that endless golden light, Jack walked again, Rasty by his side, Scout bounding ahead, finally, forever home.